of things. Did I really see Speaker Pelosi, who spent the evening as though she was sucking on the world's biggest lemon, tear up the president's transcript?
Well, I did. It looked like she was sometimes in the evening looking at a menu, trying to decide what to order for dinner or breakfast. I couldn't tell what she was looking at. It was odd. At one point, she turned with that scolding schoolmarm look of hers to somebody on their side of the aisle. I'm not quite sure whether it was somebody in the gallery that shouted something, or one of her team members that said something, but she has that angry schoolmarm look that she used tonight.
Yeah, and of course the president did not shake her hand at the beginning of the entire thing, which I thought was perhaps a moment that set the tone.
Well, I mean, I don't really blame him. I mean,
I don't blame him either.
A person who has been trying to get you kicked out of office. No, I don't think what she's done is professional or ethical or appropriate. And I think the president was entirely right to ignore her in that instance.
I would agree. At one point, I did hear a shout. There might have been one or two other times, but at one point I heard a shout. It was unintelligible to me, but otherwise, it appeared, I guess, that we had, for the most part, decorum from the assembled members. Did I miss something? Because I was busy doing other things, including preparing for this show. Did you see any serious disruption or attempted disruption?
No, I didn't. Of course, as usual, you see, the side of the aisle representing the president's party standing and applauding far more times than those on the opposition party. It was interesting though, because every once in a while the camera would pan the Democrat side of the aisle, and there would be some members, for example, Ms. Sinema, the senator from Arizona, actually standing and applauding the president. I think it's good to see that. I mean, for Nancy Pelosi to sit there and not stand for some of what the president was saying that was entirely non-political, I think was very petty.
I honestly thought it was rather petty at times myself. That was my personal take. That I know it was difficult because the president had so many things going for him in those remarks, but I thought at times that her desire to refuse to show any support for the president really cast her in an unfortunate light as well. She'd have been better off just standing and giving a few more limp applauses, if you will.
I mean, that's easy. I mean, she doesn't give away anything. She doesn't weaken her hold or anything by doing that. And it shows just a little bit of professionalism and nonpartisanship, which can go a long way.
I will take a quick break, come back with some more from Bob Barr, who represented Georgia's 7th Congressional District from 1995 until 2003. He practices law in Atlanta. He chairs Liberty Guard, and we'll learn more about that organization as well when we come back in just a moment.
And my fellow citizens, 3 years ago, we launched the Great American Comeback. Tonight, I stand before you to share the incredible results. Jobs are booming, incomes are soaring, poverty is plummeting, crime is falling, confidence is surging, and our country is thriving and highly respected again.
President Trump during this evening's State of the Union address, as we speak with former Georgia Congressman Bob Barr, who heads up Liberty Guard, a pro-liberty organization, and the Law Enforcement Education Foundation, online at laweef.org. We'll learn a bit about that here in a second. You had mentioned the occasional Democrat standing for points being made by the president during his remarks, Bob, and of course, This coming day, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, roughly, will be the time for the vote on whether to convict or acquit the president. We all know what the outcome will be. I guess the only suspense left will be the number of people who defect from a pure party line vote. And in particular, I'm curious about the number of Democrats who may vote to acquit. Your thoughts?
I think that particularly, Jim, based on the president's performance tonight, it might give a little bit more impetus to, a couple of Democrats, for example, Doug Jones from Alabama and Joe Manchin from West Virginia, possibly Senator Sinema from Arizona, to vote to acquit the president on one or both articles. So I think the president tonight, even though the purpose of his State of the Union speech was not to support himself for acquittal, that's going to happen regardless of what he said tonight. But I do think he helped himself. And I have to say also, though, that I would really like or hope that the vote for acquittal tomorrow ends this entire witch hunt against Mr. Trump by the Democrats. But I have to tell you, I don't think it's going to end. It's going to continue. That is, the Democrats going after Donald Trump will continue for the next almost 5 years until he completes the second term. Their hatred of Donald Trump runs that deep.
Now, I have heard the likes of Maxine Waters of Los Angeles talk about impeaching him again. I would have to think that that's a minority view among the House majority Democrats. But, I mean, there's nothing in the Constitution that says that you cannot keep impeaching and trying and impeaching and trying in perpetuity.
You're right. They could do that, and that would be very ill-advised from their standpoint if I were advising them. But I wouldn't discount that completely. But what I do think we'll see will be continued hearings that have as their goal continuing to attack Trump on the same issues that form the basis for this specious impeachment. For example, I would be surprised if either the House Judiciary Committee or the Government Reform and Oversight or the House Intelligence Committee did not subpoena John Bolton in the very near future to reopen that whole can of worms.
Of course, this same week has also seen the beginnings of the Democratic presidential nominee selection process with a very confused set of Iowa caucuses, and with not quite two-thirds of the vote counted even yet, 24 hours later, a big night for Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders, it would appear.
It does appear that way. I was being an Iowa native. I was born in Iowa. I was felt very sorry for Iowa because they're taking the blame for what apparently were some very ill-advised or very unprofessional or technocrats that put together this so-called app that was supposed to work to facilitate the counting and databasing of votes from yesterday, but it did just the opposite. It completely failed. But the Democrat Party nationally is in utter and complete disarray. There is no leadership, there's no vision, there's no substance, and that was on full display yesterday and today when the at least partial results of the caucuses came in. And I think we saw in the Michigan governor's rebuttal to the president's State of the Union. I didn't hear the whole thing. Governor,
Whitmer of Michigan.
Whitmer,
yeah.
But it was just very negative. The Democrats are going to work wonders. We're going to do everything that Trump hasn't. And the Democrats keep going back to the one thing that they really ought to stay away from, and that is the economy. I mean, the economy is doing so well by any measure, yet they keep going back to it, drawing attention to the fact that it is doing so well.
We must wrap on that note. Bob Barr, who heads up the Law Enforcement Education Foundation, a former Georgia congressman. I'm Jim Bohannon on Westwood One. Hi there and good evening and welcome to the Jim Bohannon Show from Westwood One Radio. We're at 1-866-50-JIMBO. 1-866-505-4626. Online, find us at JimBohannonShow.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Jimbo Talks, as we are going to be talking about the President's State of the Union remarks and Democratic responses. And we'll start off with a recap courtesy of Karen Kafa.
Madam Speaker, the President of the United States.
President Trump delivering his third State of the Union address, one that will likely set the table for his run toward November.
The state of our union is stronger than ever before.
The theme of the speech, the Great American Comeback, focusing on health care.
I've also made an ironclad pledge to American families. We will always protect patients with pre-existing conditions.
And immigration.
The United States of America should be a sanctuary for law-abiding Americans, not criminal aliens.
And national security.
Our military is completely rebuilt, with its power being unmatched anywhere in the world, and it's not even close.
The president laid out his vision for the final year of his first term in office, hoping his agenda will lead to a second.
If we hadn't reversed the failed economic policies of the previous administration, the world would not now be witnessing this great economic success.
But he comes to Capitol Hill under historic circumstances. No impeached American president has ever run for re-election. And tomorrow afternoon, the Senate will cast their votes on the charges of abuse of power and obstruction of Congress presented by the House. Democratic response to the speech delivered by Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan, one of the states that buoyed President Trump to victory in 2016, and one Democrats want back in their column this November.
Despite the dishonesty and division of the last few years, and that we heard tonight from the President of the United States, together we have boundless potential.
On Capitol Hill, I'm Karen Kafa.
And we'll talk about that tonight with your calls at 1-866-50-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626, and with best-selling author and former White House speechwriter for George W. Bush, Jonathan Horn, who joins us tonight. Jonathan, thank you for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me tonight.
And I must tell you, we are going to mention his book before we're done tonight, Washington's End, The Final Years and Forgotten Struggle. I will tell you, this is one of the best historical reads I have read in a long, long time. And he tells us things about George Washington that, trust me on this, even historians among you never knew. So very interesting conclusions that you reach about our first president. Now, to talk about the current president, your take on what the president had to say and on what Democrats had to say in response.
Well, my take is that the State of the Union is probably never going to be the same ever again. I think what President Trump did with the guests who were seated in the First Lady's box probably changed how the State of the Union will be seen for years. I think that is something that presidents in the future will be striving to create those moments that the president created. And the greatest example of it was when he reunited a military spouse with her husband and truly surprised them.
Yeah, that was pretty remarkable, I must confess. The State of the Union has, of course, become to a certain extent over the years an infomercial for the current administration, and it has made the use of various props consisting of people, and I don't deride that trend. I merely note that it happens, and it's probably very effective. I can't recall one that was presented, I don't think, as well, honestly, as this one, and as you note, the reuniting of the military family, the high point.
Right, and this tradition goes back to Ronald Reagan when he first brought a guest. It was at that point in 1982, a man who had jumped into the Potomac River to save somebody, and he honored the spirit of America and this ordinary citizen who showed the courage of the American spirit, and that tradition has gone on. But tonight, it was taken to an entirely new level. The rest of the speech itself was a rather conventional State of the Union address, and I actually think President Trump does a rather good job of delivering a conventional State of the Union address, but I don't think that's what anyone will be talking about tomorrow. I think everyone will be talking about these examples of American courage that he profiled in his speech.
1-866-50-JIMBO is our number, 1-866-505-4626, with former presidential speechwriter and best-selling author Jonathan Horn, his latest book, again, Washington's End, as we look on an interesting night. Of course, last night, the Iowa caucuses still not completely settled, and this coming day, the final vote on impeachment, at least this impeachment, and in the